Hello, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching AnewZ. Let's see your headlines. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a new military plan to take control of Gaza City. Ukraine and Russia continue to trade strikes ahead of the expected meeting between Trump and Putin. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev meets U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in the U.S. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a new military plan to take control of Gaza City amid growing pressure over the war and its humanitarian impact. The move follows Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments about plans to expand operations across Gaza Strip.
Israel is set to take control of Gaza City after its Security Cabinet approved a new plan in the early hours of Friday, a significant escalation in its nearly two-year war with Hamas. The move comes just hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel intended to take full military control of the Strip, but not govern it.
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel.
Israeli troops will prepare for a new ground offensive in Gaza's north, while issuing evacuation warnings to civilians to move. Netanyahu's office says aid will be provided to those outside combat zones, but aid groups warn conditions are already catastrophic and options for safe displacement are few. A full takeover would reverse Ariel Sharon's 2005 withdrawal of the territory and signal a dramatic new phase of the war.
Netanyahu's decision to occupy Gaza, it's like there's nothing left to occupy in the first place. We're already dying, 100,000 deaths every day. Around 100 to 150 people die daily from starvation, on top of everything else we're going through. Practically, all of Gaza has been squeezed into the western part of Gaza City, and that's all that's left.
Meanwhile, humanitarian agencies warn that Gaza is on the brink of starvation. According to the United Nations Human Rights Agency, 500,000 people are facing famine. But with 75% of the territory now under Israeli control and Hamas clinging to fragmented pockets, the battle for the Strip is no longer just about military control. It's about preventing human suffering.
Let's talk to Gustavo de Aristegui, a former diplomat who will help us explore this topic in greater detail. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Now, does it seem to you that Israel is able to achieve these goals?
Well, the goals were to defeat Hamas as a terrorist organization that had approximately 20,000 terrorists operating under its banner. But this war has been going on since October 8th of 2023. It's going to be very soon 2 years. And in every military expert's opinion that I have consulted in these 2 years, this could have been solved in weeks, if not months, but definitely not 2 years. The prolongation of this war situation has only amounted to the unbearable suffering of the Palestinian people. The Israeli government is not Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel is not Israel. And many good friends of Israel, including myself, are really shocked of what is going on in Gaza, the humanitarian tragedy that 2.1 million people are enduring. And in fact, the wisest thing to say about the situation is that the management of the crisis in Gaza is severely, profoundly hurting the future of Israel, the image of Israel, and the reason that Israel has to defend itself against terrorists. No one that is a decent human being can have the slightest doubt about the terrorist nature of Hamas. And I don't know a single important Arab thinker or politician in the region, and I have many friends among them, that have a good opinion about Hamas. A completely different set of things is that 2.1 million people are a victim of Hamas. They cannot become a victim of this war on top of everything. And let's not forget that some people are saying that because they voted for Hamas in 2007, they are an accomplice of Hamas. That is completely insane. These people are the victims of the mafias that are stealing their humanitarian aid, and that, by the way, there was a very painful report that came out some weeks ago, about the, let's call it, stimulation of those mafiosi in the band of Gaza that was being pushed by the government of Netanyahu and even by the Prime Minister himself against Hamas. So it's 1987 altogether again, when they fed and boosted Hamas in 1987 to try to counter al-Fatah and the PLO. It's the same mistake again, and it's a very grave one. That right now, the urgency is to stop famine in Gaza. And I'm going to quote President Trump, and I don't think that he is suspicious of being an enemy of the state of Israel. He said very clearly, famine cannot be faked.
Now, Netanyahu says Israel will not remain in Gaza, but will a Palestinian civilian government be able to administer a destroyed territory?
Well, let's see who is going to be the civil administration of Gaza, who is going to be the security forces in Gaza, because of course there has been the offers of different countries in the world, be it from the Arab League or be it from the West, to provide support and troops and police forces to guarantee the security of the Palestinian civilians. But the problem is that Hamas still has thousands of terrorists on the ground. How can you be sure that they will not turn against the civilian population, or they will not turn against the international forces that will be there? And the second question, which is even more relevant, is to see, is Israel going to accept international troops in Gaza? I strongly doubt it. And if Israel is going to stay in Gaza to guarantee, or that's what they say, the security of Gazans, that is only going to, let's say, incite or is going to be the center of new combats, and definitely you will be seeing a terrorist war against the IDF that is going to be waged by Hamas. So I don't think it's a good idea. And then again, the administration, who is going to be the Arab administration? Is it going to be a provisional administration given to the Arab League? There's no detail about this. Or is it going to be handed over to the Palestinian National Authority, the PNA, that is governing the West Bank? Do they have the means to? Because you know that the PLO and al-Fatah are deeply confronted with Hamas. And then Hamas has its own feuds with Islamic Jihad. Right now they have the common goal of trying to destroy the state of Israel and the Israeli forces in presence. But as soon as this war is over, the feud between Hamas and Jihad and Islamic Jihad is going to start again. And then, quite frankly, the concentration of the efforts of the world have to be first in stopping famine, second in securing the security of the civilians, and especially the weaker population, children, elderly, wounded, women, and ill people. Third, the reconstruction of Gaza. And fourth, to try to put the Gazan economy back on its feet so that people can make a decent living and survive.
Thank you very much for your time and insight. Tensions flared in Israel as thousands took to the streets on Thursday, demanding the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. In Tel Aviv, protests turned violent, with police using water cannons to break up the crowds.
In Tel Aviv, Israeli police and demonstrators clashed as officers tried to disperse crowds using water cannons on Thursday. Protesters lit flares, chanted slogans, and held banners bearing the faces of those still in captivity. Demonstrators also gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party headquarters, urging him to prioritize negotiations. Thousands of people rallied nationwide in Israel, including Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa and the Negev, demanding the immediate release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza and an end to the war. In Jerusalem, families of hostages staged a protest outside government headquarters, coinciding with a ministerial meeting on Netanyahu's plan for the full takeover of Gaza City. The protests come amid mounting public pressure on the government to strike a deal with Hamas. According to Israeli officials, 50 hostages remain in Gaza, with 20 believed to be alive. The Gaza war erupted on the 7th of October in 2023, when Hamas killed 1,200 people and took 251 hostages in a cross-border attack, according to Israeli figures. Since then, Israel's offensive has killed more than 60,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza health authorities.
Russia says it has hit a key railway hub in central Ukraine, while Kyiv reports drone strikes on Russian targets, including Crimea. This comes as Kremlin confirms that President Vladimir Putin will meet Donald Trump in the coming days, with the US president pushing for a breakthrough to end the war.
Fighting between Russia and Ukraine continues despite potential talks between both presidents together with the US president. During the last 24 hours, Russia claims that its forces have damaged a key railway hub in Ukraine's central Dnipropetrovsk region, saying that the station was used by Ukrainian forces to transport weapons and military equipment to the Donbas region. Meanwhile, Ukraine reports hitting several Russian targets, including landing craft and radar systems, using combat drones. Kyiv officials say that in Crimea, its drones also struck Russian air defense facilities. However, on Thursday, the Kremlin confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin and US Donald Trump will meet in the coming days, as the US president seeks a breakthrough to end the Ukraine war after voicing mounting frustration with his Russian counterpart and threatening new sanctions. Ahead of the peace talks, Putin says the country has many friends willing to help organize the meeting, including with United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, whom he met in the Kremlin on Thursday. Trump says that Putin doesn't have to agree to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy confirmed that Kyiv and its partner share a clear, common position that the war must end, after confirming the phone call that he had with President Trump earlier this week. The announcement for the talks comes a day after Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, held 3 hours of talks with Putin in Moscow earlier this week. Previously, Trump has threatened sanctions against Russia and against countries that buy its exports starting Friday, unless Putin agrees to end the conflict in Ukraine.
Previously, we spoke with political scientist Danielle Mello about the possible upcoming Trump-Putin talks. She shared her insights on what we might expect from this meeting.
What one hopes would come out of a summit is a concrete plan, perhaps even a roadmap for peace, long-lasting peace in Ukraine. Right now, there doesn't seem to be any true indication that such is what will occur. And in fact, most indications seem to be that we may have a repeat of the type of summit that President Trump held in 2018 in Helsinki with Mr. Putin, in which not a great deal of advances were made. Having said that, again, every time that leaders meet, this is an opportunity for there to be conversations, dialogue, step forth. And if there's one difference here, it's certainly the apparent willingness of the United States to not completely exclude Mr. Zelenskyy and the European allies from these conversations. That being the case, and if that materializes, that would definitely be a step forward in this process. At the same time, The most likely scenario, certainly according to many other analysts, but given the pattern that we have seen, the pattern of interaction between Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, the most likely situation that we have here is a diplomatic attempt, a diplomatic maneuver by President Putin to try to win some time and to a certain extent, to appease Mr. Trump ahead of this or moving towards this deadline for sanctions. So even though the President of the United States has made many even incendiary accusations towards Mr. Putin over the past few weeks, calling him crazy, for instance, one of those coming to mind, it has been mostly bluster. We have seen actually very little direct pressure on Russia beyond just a battle of words.
On Thursday, Cambodia and Thailand's top defense officials agreed to allow observers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to inspect the disputed border areas. This is to ensure that fighting does not resume after a 5-day conflict that ended with at least 43 deaths and a temporary ceasefire in late July. The leaders only agreed to negotiate after U.S. President Donald Trump warned that tariff talks would be paused unless peace was restored. The two countries have long disputed parts of their 817-kilometer land border, which was originally mapped out in 1907 during the French colonial rule. Today, Shenzhen stands out as one of China's major hubs for finance, technology, and global trade. As a key point along the Middle Corridor, it plays an increasingly important role in connecting China with Central Asia, the South Caucasus, and Europe. Anastasia Lavrini brings us this special report.
Hello, welcome to Shenzhen, a city that in just 40 years has transformed from a small fishing village into a major financial and technology center. Today it stands as a symbol of China's economic progress and plays one of the key roles in the Middle Corridor, the new generation Eurasian trade route connecting China to Central Asia, South Caucasus to Europe. Shenzhen is leading in innovation. It's also home to the headquarters of some of China's most influential companies, including Huawei, a global leader in telecommunications and digital solutions. Also for BYD, a pioneer in electric mobility and renewable energy technologies. In the lead-up to COP29 held in Azerbaijan last year, BYD delivered a fleet of electric buses to support sustainable urban transport in Baku, further strengthening the technological and environmental ties between the two countries, between China and Azerbaijan. Nearby is Yantian Port, one of the busiest container ports in the world. In 2024, it handled over 15 million shipping containers, that is standard size used worldwide to measure cargo. Many of these containers travel along the Middle Corridor, highlighting Shenzhen's strategic role in connecting China to Europe and Asia. Trade along the Middle Corridor is growing rapidly. In 2024, over 4 million tons of goods were transformed along the route, a significant increase from previous years. This growth is supported by infrastructure developments in countries like Azerbaijan, which is enhancing its rail and port facilities to accommodate the rising trade volumes. Azerbaijan's strategic position in the Middle Corridor is gaining international attention. In July 2025, Azerbaijan and China signed a memorandum of understanding to boost transit cooperation along the Middle Corridor. This agreement includes expanding transit operations, digitalizing infrastructure, and increasing cargo flow, underscoring the corridor's growing importance in global trade networks. So Shenzhen is not just a growing city, it's shaping the future of trade and cooperation between East and West, building new connections across continents. Anastasia Lavrina from China, especially for AnewZ.
On Thursday, President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev met with U.S. President's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Washington during his working visits to the U.S. A memorandum of cooperation was signed between Azerbaijan's state oil company SOCAR and ExxonMobil with the participation of President Aliyev and Steve Witkoff. The documents were signed by Azerbaijan's Minister of Economy, Mikhail Jabarov, and Vice President of ExxonMobil, John Adil. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that he will host the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, and the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, at the White House today for what he called a historic peace summit. In a post shared on his Truth Social account, Trump said both leaders would join him for an official peace signing ceremony, marking what could be a major diplomatic breakthrough in Azerbaijan-Armenia normalization process. He wrote, "These two nations have been at war for many years, resulting in the deaths of thousands of people. Many leaders have tried to end the war with no success until now, thanks to Trump." Trump claimed that his administration has been engaged in behind-the-scenes diplomacy with both sides for quite some time, leading to the upcoming agreement. In addition to the peace deal, Trump said the United States will also sign bilateral agreements with both countries to enhance economic cooperation. Turkey and Syria have signed a landmark agreement to establish a joint business council. It aims to restore institutional ties after years of fractured relations.
Turkey and Syria have signed a landmark agreement to establish a joint business council aiming to restore institutional ties after years of fractured relations. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed on Wednesday during a roundtable in Ankara chaired by Syrian Economy and Industry Minister Nidal Al-Shar and Turkey's Deputy Trade Minister Özgür Volkan Ağar, with participation from business leaders under the Foreign Economic Relations Board. The talks focused heavily on opportunities in Syria's post-war reconstruction, with special emphasis on build, operate, transfer, and public-private partnership models that could follow Turkish firms to play a leading role in rebuilding critical infrastructure. In total, 9 additional Memorandum of Understanding agreements were signed between Turkish and Syrian civil society organizations, laying the groundwork for long-term cooperation across trade, investment, and industry. Turkey's trade ministry calls for the reopening of the communication channels between the private sectors and deepening economic ties in a structured, sustainable way. While diplomatic relations between Ankara and Damascus remain sensitive, this economic step marks a strategic re-engagement with the potential to grow if stability and trust can be built over time. For AnewZ, this is Aliya Aziz, Istanbul, Turkey.
Foreign Minister of Turkey Hakan Fidan visited Syria and met with President Ahmed al-Shara and Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani on Thursday. Turkey says its priority is to seize these opportunities in line with the shared interest of both countries and in a way that supports Syria's stability and security 8 months after the fall of the Assad regime. Let's talk to Mehmet Ogucu, chairman of London Energy Club, about Turkey's foreign minister's visit to Syria for talks with President Ahmed al-Shara and other officials. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, what were the key outcomes of Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan's latest visit to Syria?
Well, Hakan Fidan's visit to Damascus came at a very critical time, following Israeli attacks on Syria, as you remember. Also, there were some attempts on the border region with Turkey of PYD, the Kurdish entity, that is trying to work out another plan with Damascus, neglecting what it already agreed last March about integrating PYD forces, military forces, into the Syrian National Army. And so I think the agenda, the top issue was how to help Syria capacity building in defense, energy, and state building, especially to counter the attempts from Israel against Syria. Then I think the other critical issue that Hakan Fidan discussed with Ahmed al-Shara was how to manage relations Kurdish groups, whether they will be integrated into the Syrian National Army or seeing the opportunity, also afraid of what's happening in Durzi populated regions of Syria, and Kurds will demand a separate identity similar to what they have in Kurdish regional government in northern Iraq. And so Turkey has threatened to intervene militarily if the Kurdish groups there would go alone as they wish. So Turkey has every interest to have these Kurdish groups integrated into the Syrian National Army, Syrian economy, and Syrian constitution, so that there is not going to be any issue regarding Syrian unity and territorial integrity. But also there was issues related to the establishment of Turkish Syrian Business Council and energy. When we talk about energy, of course, Azerbaijan also came into the picture. And as you know, SOCAR recently signed an agreement with the Syrian government. And the first molecules of Azerbaijani gas started flowing to Syria via Turkey, Kilis. And also SOCAR promised to invest more in the upstream opportunities. So what's happening, in my opinion, is that all the way from Azerbaijan, Caspian, through Georgia, Turkey, Syria, and a new energy corridor will be built. And Azerbaijan will play a very critical role in that. If the peace prevails in the future, especially with Israel, I think this pipeline could be linked all the way to Israel, East Mediterranean as well. So in part, I think the energy, the political collaboration, business council creation, and energy cooperation involving also SOCAR, and military capacity rebuilding in Syria. These are the critical issues that Al-Shara and Hakan Fidan meeting produce.
Now, speaking about peace, what role does Turkey see for itself in supporting Syria's stability and security?
Well, from the very beginning, actually, Turkey has been supporting Syria through humanitarian assistance initially, providing immediate electricity needs from the border regions, and also mobilizing its business sector to build infrastructure in Syria, because Syria has been damaged significantly as a result of the Assad era and all the civil war that followed as well. And therefore, there is a need for reconstruction in Syria to the tune of almost $500 billion needed immediately for the next 3 years to build the country. Turkey cannot provide this alone, of course, because Turkey already has a heavy burden of the Syrian refugees who fled Syria in the past, almost up to 7 million people, the largest refugee population in the world. But still, in collaboration and partnership with Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, US, European Union, and to a certain extent Azerbaijan, and Turkey is playing a critical role in opening the way and collaborating for reconstruction in Syria, which is critical, which is essential for rebuilding the peace in the country.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Also, I think I should also come to that. You know, there is some ethnic and sectarian conflict inside Syria. It's now Sunni population running the country. However, Alawites on the coastal regions, Durzi population close to Israel and supported by Israel, and the Kurds in the north, they are all not seeing eye to eye. So if you want to have a permanent peace in Syria, all these different ethnical sectarian forces should be somehow reconciled, and Turkey could play a role in that regard as well.
Well, thank you very much for your time and insight.
My pleasure.
Caspian nations are stepping up efforts to protect the Caspian Sea. At a meeting in AnewZ during the UN Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries, Deputy Prime Ministers from the 5 coastal states raised concerns about ecological changes. Farza Kalamozina has more.
Kazakhstan has the longest stretch of Caspian coastline, almost a third of the entire shore. We are in Aktau, the regional capital of Mangostau, where the scale of the sea's retreat is hard to ignore. Huge areas that were once underwater are now completely dry. And according to the National Hydrometeorology Service, the Caspian's current water level is minus 29 meters, based on the Baltic Height system. The shallow northern part of the sea, shared by Kazakhstan and Russia, is suffering the most. A drop like this has not been seen since 1977. And in the last 15 years, the water surface in Kazakhstan's part of the Caspian has shrunk by more than 7%. Marine life is also at risk. Sturgeon numbers have plummeted by 90% over the past 40 years. The causes are complex, but scientists point to several key drivers: rising greenhouse gas emissions, higher air temperatures, and faster water loss from both the sea itself and the rivers that flow into it. This is made worse by increasing demand for water in farming, industry, and city infrastructure, which puts even more pressure on river systems. About 130 rivers flow into the Caspian, but the Volga plays the biggest role. It provides over 80% of the sea's annual inflow, around 270 to 300 billion cubic meters of water. But decades of industrial development and water infrastructure projects along the Volga may have reduced the amount of water that actually reaches the sea. Environmental experts are calling for a joint review of the Caspian's water balance and for long-term cooperation between all the countries that share this sea. Because the Volga flows through Russian territory and the Caspian is a shared basin, scientists say active international cooperation is essential, not only at a technical level, but through political dialogue as well. As concerns grow, international organizations have joined the Save the Caspian Sea movement. It was launched by Kazakh ecologist and legal expert Vadim Ni. We met him in Almaty before traveling to Aktau, and here is what he told us.
The current trend will continue, then we can lose almost 80% of habitats for Caspian seals, for sturgeon fish in this century. It's a very likely scenario for Kazakhstan, because we are planning the dredging works in the seaports and also on the Caspian Sea to enable more transportation of cargoes on the Caspian Sea. But also we are increasing the oil deposit exploitation on Kashagan. That will lead to the doubling, the tripling the pollution of the Caspian Sea, which is already very high.
Falling water levels threaten the entire region, but the experts warn that Kazakhstan could be affected the most. Some are already comparing the situation to the Aral Sea crisis, where years of environmental decline caused major damage to nature and human health. Many also question the effectiveness of the Tehran Convention, signed in the early 2000s. Most of its decisions have not been put into action. And just recently, President Tokayev brought up the Caspian issue again during a speech at the United Nations Regional Center in Almaty. It was another call from Kazakhstan to the global community, urging the world to help protect the largest enclosed body of water on the planet before the damage becomes irreversible. From Aktau, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to AnewZ.